Well, we're not just talking about where we're going. Well, we also hopefully get a little time to talk about where we've been. And Chip took us back, Jody, all the way back to Julia. My kids, these guys, they're reading about Matt Jennings and Jamie Bissonette and Louis DiBaccari and that whole crew. Can you kind of fill in who the big players were?
Yeah. I was actually thinking about this morning. And so Julia came here in the 60s. She came back from Europe, right? Mm-hmm. In the 60s. Does anybody not know who Julia Child is? You all know who Julia Child is? She really was remarkable in her contribution, in her thinking, in what she decided to do. And she truly was, and if you saw the movie, Julia and Julia, the Julia blogger, you can just
try to
but Meryl Streep was amazing, and Meryl Streep did an amazing job of projecting Julia Child, and she was all of that. She was a person who, when you met her, you knew exactly who she was, and she was gracious and generous. She didn't suffer certain kinds of opinions. She was very direct and straightforward, and when she decided that she wanted to learn how to cook, that's what she did. And she really didn't, clearly there were hurdles for her, but she saw them as something to surmount, not something to stop her. And she brought that energy and that approach to life back here and infused, I think, all of us. There was also a woman named Madeleine Kamen who was here, and she was really an amazing chef as well. She had a cooking school in Newton, and her cooking school produced lots of people who are in our generation who were working in restaurants at the time. She also, one of her students was Roberta Dowling, who had built Cambridge School of Culinary Arts, which is continued to run now. And so there was a lot more than Julia here. And Lydia Shire, who grew up here, was somebody who, like Julia, Lydia faced challenges because she was a woman, but she just marched forward, and that was all these women created an environment in Boston for people who wanted to pursue culinary arts and restaurants, and there was this notion that you could really do anything.
And Lydia, if you think about what Lydia did, she didn't just break ground for what women could do in the kitchen, she broke ground for what women could do as business women. Yep. And that's what I think sort of separates you and your sort of colleagues in Boston. You're not just great chefs making beautiful food, you've also created these businesses that are so important.
And Boston supported that. I think it wasn't just that we were forging ahead. It was actually that the community, I felt, always welcomed, and supported. I also made a choice about who I worked for, from Lydia to Gordon, and Gordon was somebody where, he actually ultimately pushed me out the door. I was his sous chef for 3 years, and one day he said, I think you need to apply for this job at Michaela's.
This is Gordon Hammersley. Oh, yeah. Gordon Hammersley, who opened Hammersley's Bistro in the South End when the South End, like, Fenway or any of the neighborhoods we're talking about, the South End was sort of undiscovered.
Right, pre-gentrification.
Undiscovered part of Boston.
Yeah. Anyway, the crux of what we deal with every day has not changed. The landscape of Boston has changed, the landscape of restaurants have changed, but what we do every day is what you all do for people is to create environments that bring people together to share in company, in conversation, and food and spirits and wine. And the thread that weaves all that together is hospitality. People want that human touch that's so important. So what we're providing in this business is so important. And that's why, you know, doing something like a restaurant, a quick serve restaurant, Saloniki, in a neighborhood and getting to know the people in that neighborhood. We have regulars that come in and our staff knows who those people are, just the way in, you know, the fine dining restaurants that you're working in, you're making those relationships. That didn't, I don't think that we assumed that that happened in fast food restaurants, that people formed relationships. But that notion that hospitality is important has made its way. And I think there's a, I don't know if this is a word, but I use it anyway, democratization of quality food and quality experience. And that's, to me, the biggest evolution and the change that's happened, not just in Boston, but also around, you know.
But that takes leadership, that takes business acumen, that takes a vision and a commitment. And I think at some core of what we're getting at here, there's food, there's society, there's commitment, but if you take these things and put them all in the right place, in a neighborhood where there's a need for it, you're creating a greater culture. And if you go back to my tirade earlier about the vacuum in this marketplace and the reality that we're below the national average for national accounts, and we have more independence and more freestanding concepts, there's an opportunity for all of you to say, I sense a niche, I have a dream, there's a belief, there's something in my family, there's something hereditary, there's some direction I want to go where I can feel more complete and have that self-actualization where you actually say, I'm bringing something I'm very proud of. I'm sitting next to two restaurateurs who are doing that. They'll never brag about that, but they're bringing forward vision and leadership and creating environments to have other people learn these things, benefit from it, share in the hospitality, share in the communal feeling of being proud about having a job and working something that's not just a brand, it's a living entity. And Jillian putting these events together, for you all to talk about the approach to it, we got talking last night about what rent is like, what profit is like, what the business side of this operation, not just who has the hottest craft cocktail going on or who won a James Beard Award. I mean, there's got to be a sustainability to your concept moving forward. So as you look at this entity called entertainment or hospitality, we have a responsibility to be dynamic, to be aware, to be showing leadership and demonstrative about that, and allowing an environment where other people can flourish. And as I look around this room and I see the feedback and such, it's clear to me that we're in that moment right now, where there's a growth going on. And I feel very strong that this Boston scene is going to continue.
East Coast Grill is the best, is the #1 restaurant in Boston / Cambridge, but it's so enduring. You know, I feel the same way. I think about that restaurant all the time. You know, and just how many small things were so original, like that you could buy a 6-pack of beer for the kitchen. Yeah. It was like Chris just came up with that. You know, it's just such a, it just got under your skin in a way that it's just so timeless. He created a community. I mean, it was a community, and he felt a responsibility when, you know, when I looked out the window this morning and I saw the snow and I thought, oh, shit, are we gonna have to make a decision? You know, that's the worst decision that you have to make in a day, which is it snowing so hard that you have to close a restaurant? You probably don't close these restaurants, but Chris never closed his restaurant because he felt that he had a commitment to the community to be open. I think he probably closed Christmas Day or something, but he was always open.
Didn't they name that library over in Cambridge after him?
Yeah, right.
Some museum or something?
Yeah. Yeah, and he started First Mondays. That was probably, did you ever go to a First Monday? Did you ever go to a First Monday?
No, what was the first Monday?
So the sort of
First
like,
Monday of a
it was
month.
sort of like this. The first Monday of every month, people would gather at the Schlesinger Library, named after his ancestors. The Schlesinger Library has an incredible cookbook collection. If you didn't know that, that's where I used to do my research, pre-Google. Is that I would go over there, and you could take the books off the shelves. You can't take them off the shelves. So they can go get them and bring them to you. You can only use pencils. But it was there would be like 30 people around a table talking about issues around food, sustainability, restaurants, the life of a chef, all kinds of things. So the title of this talk is Evolution of Boston Restaurants. I started in Boston restaurants in the early 80s. So we're talking 30-something years, right? And I was, because I was about 25 at the time. There's a generation that's declining right now. There are only a few of us who started in that time who are still working in our restaurants. Lydia and me. Barbara was she's 10 years younger
Next
than
generation.
me. Yeah. But Gordon's retired, Chris Schlesinger's retired, Jasper's retired, Monsef Medeb is gone. Jimmy Burke's still.
Yeah, up in Maine.
But he's.
Name? South Shore. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So, and restaurants aren't going to stop. Those restaurants are closing, and there's an opportunity, clearly, and lots of room for you guys to go open restaurants in Somerville. It's a great profession. It is enormously rewarding. It's all about relationships and the people that you meet. It's what you offer a community. It's a business. And I think that one of the things that's going to be critically important is transparency in business and making sure that everybody knows how it works. Because the bottom line in a restaurant, if you guys don't know it, you should know, nationally is 5%. So for every dollar, the profit is only 5%. And that 5% has to pay off your investors, has to pay you if you own it.
And then you get taxed on it, so it's lower than 5%.
If you're doing well, it can be between 10 and 20. But the national average is 5%. It's really important that you understand how all those pennies work.
Awesome. All right. Thanks to all of you for your time, both today and for the last couple of J.E.M sessions. Thanks, Jillian Rocco. Thank you, Dan, Jody, and Chip.
Thank you.
For taking
Thank
time
you.
out of busy days to share your experience with us. All right, gang?
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Very nicely done.